Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. That's me, by the way. Do please, come on, like and subscribe. You know it helps. It really does. I'm going to talk today about Reading Jail by special request. But a number of requests here from a guy who was actually in Reading Jail. But it closed in 2014, so it must be before that. So the guys on here reading my Tales from the Jails, listening to them and all the rest of it, and posting, thank you very much. Do please, you can all do it. Make your comments down below, make your requests, insult me. Go for it, I'm not bothered. As Brian London said, you can't insult me, I'm too ignorant. And then Muhammad Ali gave him the best dusting he's had in his life. At the end of the fight, Brian London, the boxer, he said, they told me he was fast, but they didn't say he was bloody grease lightning. If you've ever seen the boxing match, it's available on YouTube. Watch it. Muhammad Ali versus Brian London, the Blackpool boxer. He absolutely wallops him. It's about 30 or 40 unreplied punches. Boom, 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 like that. Poor Brian London. He was a nice guy, actually. He ran a club called the 007 in Blackpool. I knew his head bouncer. In fact, his head bouncer was in Strangeways, tried to bribe me. Not that I would pay any attention to that. Although I did manage to get him transferred to Kirkham, inadvertently, by the way, because I reported him for attempting to corrupt me, which he didn't manage to do. Anyway, that's a long time ago, folks. We're going to talk today about Reading Jail, built in 1844. It was styled after HMP Pentonville, which is quite a coincidence, really, because its most famous occupant in all the time it was operating, from 1844 to 2014, its most famous prisoner was none other than Oscar Wilde. Now, Oscar Wilde was imprisoned in Reading Jail. First of all, he was sent to Holloway. Now, he had been conducting a same-sex, a homosexual affair with the son of the Marquis of Queensberry. You know, the Queensberry rules, the boxing rules, which is odd, seeing as I quoted Brian London at the start of all this. But seriously, the Marquis of Queensberry had a son called Douglas, and Alfred Douglas, I believe his name was. And he was a friend, a very close friend of Oscar Wilde. And when Marquis of Queensberry left a note at Wilde's club, because he was a member of a club in London, it said, to the posing sodomite Oscar Wilde. And Oscar Wilde was persuaded by Alfred Douglas to issue proceedings against the Marquis of Queensberry for what amounted to criminal libel at the time. The case failed, and of course it was then that Wilde was arrested, because it was proved in the defence of the Marquis of Queensberry that his comments were not defamatory, they were factual. They got a lot of private detectives to search out the fact that Wilde had been associating with teenage boys, 16, 15 years old, and attending numerous, what they call them, male brothels in and around London, where he was paying young men for personal favours. And so subsequently Wilde was arrested, and he was arrested, believe this, at the Cadogan Hotel in Pont Street in London. I was going to go and visit the Cadogan Hotel and stay there, but it's hellish expensive to rent the room that was Oscar Wilde's. But if you're a determined Oscar Wilde fan, and I'm a great fan of Oscar Wilde, not concerning the teenage boys, but concerning his work, I particularly like his work. What is it called? The Importance of Being Earnest. There's a scene in there in where the Duchess shouts, "A handbag! A handbag!" It's very funny. Yeah, he was a brilliant, witty man. And of course, he was initially, when he was sentenced, he was placed in, he got 2 years imprisonment, hard labour, for offences against public decency, in effect. And he was originally sent to, he had been held in Holloway prison, but he was bailed out of there. Some bishop managed to put the money up for him, which was £5,000 at the time, which was a king's ransom in those days. And he was subsequently tried in London and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, hard labour, and he was taken to Pentonville, where he was held in Pentonville serving hard labour, where he subsequently collapsed, and when he collapsed of fatigue and I don't know what else it was, he injured his ear, which burst his eardrum when he fell, which subsequently, as time passed, contributed to his early demise as he developed meningitis. Anyway, whilst he was in Reading Jail, he was transferred from Pentonville to Reading Jail, and in Reading Jail, in the year 1895, he was transferred there, and he served there till 1897. And whilst he was in Reading Jail, he of course wrote the famous Ballad of Reading Jail, which begins, just giving it off the top of my head, you know. I never saw a man who looked with such a wistful eye upon that little tent of blue that prisoners call the sky. And it tells the story of a man who is sentenced to death. And the man who was sentenced to death was actually in Reading Jail at the same time that Oscar Wilde was there. And the man was a former soldier called Charles Thomas Woolridge, who had murdered his wife, Ellen, also known as Nell, by slashing her throat with a cutthroat razor. Very appropriate, really, when you think about it. Anyway, he was sentenced to death, and he was subsequently held in Reading Jail. And Oscar Wilde wrote that he couldn't speak to him because it was the silent system at the time, the separate system they called it, whereby it was a psychological torture, I believe. And anyway, they held Oscar Wilde in there alongside the condemned man, Charles Thomas Woolridge, who was subsequently hung in Reading Jail on the 7th of July, 1896, and the hangman was one James Billington, who infamously used what's known as the long drop. And apparently the long drop was, too long for the actual weight of the body, and when Charles Thomas Woolridge was hung, it found that whilst it did kill him, it stretched his neck by almost a foot. So he stretched it by 11 inches, apparently. And of course, Charles Thomas Woolridge would be buried in unconsecrated ground inside Reading Jail. Reading Jail is now closed. It's there's something of a museum there. It's a Grade 2 listed building. And as I say, I've done this little talk on Reading Jail by specific request. And if you've got any requests at all, you put them down there. I don't know. Any comments? I'm a happy guy. I will respond. And yesterday I did a song by Elvis, which was requested by Sharon, and thank you very much. You said you enjoyed that, Sharon. I expect to see you on the sick parade. I've got the cure. It's Largactyl. Upper outer quadrant of the backside, so stand by for action. It'll be with a needle, not with the Oscar Wilde trick. That's the song ringer, folks, because I'm going to sing you a song today. It's not by request, but this is another Elvis song. This is, and I hope you enjoyed that little talk on Reading Jail, by the way. Did you? If you did, you know what to do. Report sick in the morning. This is a song by Elvis. It's A Fool Such As I. I've actually got this on 78. It's quite rare, Pardon me if I'm sentimental when we say goodbye. Don't be angry with me, should I cry? When you're gone, yet I dream a little dream as years go by. Now and then there's a fool such as I. Oh, now and then there's a fool such as I am over you. You taught me how to love, and now you say that we're through. I'm a fool, but I love you, dear, until the day I die. Now and then there's a fool such as I. Well, now and then there's a fool such as I am over you. You taught me how to love, and now you tell me that we're through. Oh, I'm a fool, but I love you, dear, until the day I die. Now and then there's a fool such as I. There you go. That was a bit of a groaner of an end, weren't it? Tales from the Jails, folks. John G. Sutton. Please like and subscribe.